Hey, what's up? I have not done a video in a while, so I thought I'd do a quick one today. Welcome to Learn from Open Source. Every video is about a different open source project, diving into the code behind it so we can learn from it. Over here, I'm going to go through one that was posted just this evening by the Vercel CEO. He writes, "We're building a V0 Slack bot. It can help any app or give you expert answers on Vercel, Next.js, and so on. Here's the open source recipe for how to build AI agents like V0 and deploy them to Vercel and Slack HQ." So if you click the link, you will have the full guide here. If you want, instead of watching the video, just read through this and you'll get similar content. I have opened the repo as well, so we're actually going to sort of go through the code. You can see here it's a very small repo, so it's going to be a short video. So what does this Slack bot actually do? So it's actually quite basic. Unfortunately, it doesn't go into V0 and what they're doing with Next.js, but it would give you the basis of how you could build that yourself or how they're building it. So at the end, what they actually do is they just do a Slack bot with two different tools. One of them is Excel, which is for web search, which we'll take a look at. And the other is just tell me what the weather is. And they use some other API to give you the response there. If you want the TLDR of the video, basically it's a Slack bot. You have an agent with generate text and tool calling for search web. This might hurt my YouTube analytics, but yeah, that's all we're going to cover in this video. Jumping into the repo, looking at the package.json. So we have the AI packages. So we're using OpenAI here with the Vercel AI package. We're using Next.js for real-time web search, use Zod for validation, and there's also a Vercel function wait until, which we'll take a look at. So yeah, the entire app is basically just API/events, and this is what the Slack bot uses to communicate. So Slack is going to send us a post request to this URL /API/events. There's one URL verification URL, and then there's event callback URLs, and then each type of event we're going to handle differently. So if we get an app mention, we'll handle it one way. If we get an assistant thread started, another way, and then there's one more type of message. The verification itself, so I guess I haven't built Slack bots before, but I'm not sure if this is the right way to do it, but either way, you respond with a challenge. Maybe there was supposed to be some other verification, maybe it doesn't matter, but this is basically for Slack, not super important. Then there is a verify request, so when the real requests are coming in, we need to check that it's actually coming from Slack and we're not accidentally sending information to the wrong person. We get our bot ID, so in Slack, you're communicating with a bot back and forth, you're asking questions as a user, and on the other end, there's the bot, that's us, or this sort of endpoint. You can see we're doing payload.event, a Slack event. Another way to do this, by the way, instead of just doing the as is, since we have Zod in the project, so we could have verified all of this with Zod and not have to sort of use TypeScript to coerce the types. But yeah, it's a small project, so probably easier this way. You can see we're using wait until 3 different times. So what does this do? Basically, this comes from the Vercel functions package, and it basically means we want to go keep running this in the background, but we don't want to await here, basically. We want to return the result immediately. The problem is, if we didn't have this here, let's say we didn't have a wait and we didn't have wait until, then this basically, we'd return immediately, this would end, and sort of anything that's happening here wouldn't happen. And these will take a while. These will take at least a few seconds to run because we're making an AI call to OpenAI. So the reason we do wait until, if we did a wait, by the way, that would also theoretically work, but it wouldn't work with Slack because we need to give a response within 3 seconds. And if you're calling OpenAI, it's going to take more than 3 seconds to get a response. So we use this nice wait until from Vercel functions. We say, hey, we're going to run this in the background. We're going to keep going, but we're going to return the response immediately. But the function isn't going to shut down either because we've called wait until. So I'm going to quickly go into Slack utils. You can see there's a signing secret. So that's for verification, just to make sure we're getting it from Slack. You can see we're also setting up the client. This is with web client Slack web API. We've got another few functions. We've got get bot ID. So what this does is basically finds our own ID as the bot user. This will be important to know if we're the ones that have sent the message. We don't want to respond to ourselves. We only want to respond to the user. And then we have some other functions as well, which we'll see how they're helpful soon. But we basically can get all the replies in a certain conversation. And so the same way you might be speaking to ChatGPT or Claude, you have a conversation, and all those previous messages are passed into the AI, and then the AI can continue the conversation. So we're doing the same thing here. Just as we haven't had to build our own UI for the chatbot, we're just using Slack. And by the way, for Inbox Zero, this is an app I'm building for an AI email app that manages your email for you. So I actually do something very similar, exact same functionality, but instead of a Slack webhook, it's a Google webhook. And also I grab sort of the previous conversation that you've had with your AI assistant. And yeah, same sort of thing. You get all the messages and you pass it in to the AI, and then it can sort of pick up where it's left off in its conversation with you. But really cool thing here is you don't need to build any UI yourself. You can just use any existing chat API. It could be an email, Slack, Discord bot, and it would just work for all of them. Here you can see there's a bit of parsing, so we're deciding if it's the bot, that us basically, then it's going to say the role of the message is assistant, and otherwise it's going to be the user, so the AI knows which messages it sent and which messages the user sent to it. And then the last util we have a set status. So when the bot is doing something or taking some time to respond, so we can set status, and here you can see the status, we can see how it's used. So here, update status, and you can say is thinking. Basically, update status util returned a function over here, and here you can see we've got the update status function, and we're setting our own status as the bot is thinking. Another util, exa, super simple to set up. All we do is do exa equals new exa. Going to go back to the API. Now we see we have 3 different types: app mention, assistant thread started, and the last one, I guess, the conversation. So let me just quickly show you over here. App mention, this is just from the guide. So just looking at the guide, you see when a user mentions your bot in a channel, the app mention event is triggered. And then we're going to call our own handle new app mention function. If I take a look at handle new app mention, so console log, we're starting. If it's a bot, then skipping app mention. Otherwise, we're going to update the status to is thinking. Then we're going to get the full thread of messages. So we saw that util before. And then we're going to generate a response. I guess this will be with AI. We should take a look at that now. And then we're going to update the message. So we handle this in 2 different ways. If it's a thread, we'll go get the thread and generate a response. Otherwise, we'll just go and generate the response. So let's go in and generate the response, because this is really the core of the app. Very short as well, 70 lines. So we get a bunch of messages in. This is our previous conversation. And also we pass in the function that gives us the ability to update our status. Now we're using AI SDK, very nice to use if you haven't used it before, super easy to switch between LLM models. Over here you can see we're using OpenAI GPT-4o, but if you wanted to use Claude Sonnet 3.7, you'd literally just replace this line. Now, generate text, we have a system prompt, we have some messages we're passing in. We're saying we're allowed to do max 10 steps. So this is an agent, meaning it can continue to call more and more steps. And there are 2 tool calls over here. So if the AI agent wants, it can call get weather 5 times and then search web 5 times, or it could do search web, weather, search web, and so on until it's gotten all the information it wants to give us our response. The system prompt, you are a Slack bot assistant. Keep your responses concise and to the point. Do not tag users. Current date is blah, blah, blah. In case dates are mentioned in articles, it's helpful to know. If it got some news from 10 years ago, it should know. It shouldn't give us the weather from 10 years ago from some article it found. Make sure to always include sources in your final response if you use web search. Put sources in line if possible. Okay, cool. So here's the get weather tool. And what does it do? Get the current weather at location. And here are the parameters it can take in: latitude, longitude, and city. And so once it actually starts running, if the AI decides to call this tool, this function basically, then the following will get executed. And we need to make sure that the AI has passed in the correct parameters, and we do Zod parsing here basically to make sure that happens. So the AI SDK is going to use this Zod object, and if the AI has passed in the wrong parameters for some reason, it's going to throw an error. So all of that is happening beforehand, and then once we start going, we say update status. So the bot is now saying is getting weather for city, so is getting weather for London, for example. We're going to call this API, which gives us the weather. So we didn't actually need the city name for this API call. But anyway, I guess at least we can do it in the update status logs. Then we get the weather data, and then we're going to return the result to our AI. So the city is just, I guess, what it passed in itself, giving the temperature, weather code, and the humidity. Now, next tool we're going to look at is use this to search web for information. This is search web tool. Here you can see the parameters again. We have a query string, and we have a specific domain that it might want to search. For example, it might only want to search for Apple because the user has asked for, what's the latest iPhone. So a domain to search if the user specifies. For example, bbc.com should only be the domain without the protocol. Domain name without the protocol. So again, we update the status so the user knows what the AI bot is doing at any given moment. We're searching the web for some query that the AI has decided on. Here we're using exa, so pretty cool how you can just search anything with 5 lines of code. You literally just set up the exa client that we saw a few minutes ago and then search and contents. And so, we're doing a live crawl, including specific domains potentially. And then we're basically returning the results So like I guess the page title, the URL we got it from, and a snippet of text. And we're limiting it to 1,000 characters, I guess, to not go over the context size, or not to to limit our costs, basically. And then you can see the final step. We've decided to convert the text to Slack Markdown format. Oh, and so, okay, these are the tool calls, but what we actually get back here is some text from the AI. So this might have been generated after like 5 different calls. So an example search where it's using both tools is like, what would be a good activity to do in London tomorrow? So one, it could go and get the weather, and then, you know, let's say it's 35 degrees tomorrow, then we can go and search the web, what are some good activities to do in London? And so the AI can do a handful of steps. It could search the web a few times. It gets a response. It's going to generate some text as the response. And that is basically what we're going to send back to the user. So jumping back to handle app mention, we either get a thread or not, generate the response, and basically send it back to the user. That's basically the entire app. I mean, we've done app handle new app mention. We're going to do assistant thread message as well. So let's see what happens there. This is Slack specific, but this is basically telling the user like what it can do. So hi, I'm an AI assistant built with the AI SDK by Vercel, and it's giving some example prompts as well. What is the latest Premier League news from the BBC? That's one question we can ask. And what is the current weather in London? There's another question. It's funny, I came up with the same question, but that was just random. Maybe it was my subconscious and I had like glanced at this before. But anyway, handle a new assistant message. When a new message comes in, like similar idea, it's thinking get the thread and basically respond with markdown format. And yeah, that's the handle new assistant message here. So that's the end of the video. Probably the simplest video I've ever done. Hopefully you enjoyed that anyway. I wanted to get back into the swing of things of doing videos, so I just chose something really quick to do that I could just record in one take. So I hope you enjoyed it. Check out the channel for other videos. A lot of the other videos are a lot more complex. They don't take 10 minutes to go through.